Hello everyone, and welcome back to the video by me, The Witcher George. Today I'm going to be talking about something that honestly, I do say this in almost every video, but I really mean it. I think this is one of the most interesting parts of The Witcher 3. Maybe not most, but it is certainly a very interesting part that I feel most people, myself included to be completely honest, sort of ignore when they play The Witcher 3. Or it's not as focused on, or it's something that kind of gets brushed to the side, at least in The Witcher 3, and it's not, I wouldn't say not necessarily part of the main story, it's sort of in the background. And the way I wanted to tackle this video was just think about it in the frame of why is Radovid so crazy? Or I should say was crazy, depending on how you play the game. Because I feel that this character, yeah, we all know him as the crazy guy that did the witch hunts, but I feel that he isn't actually given enough credit for how strong of a leader he actually was, despite the horrible stuff he did. He did do a surprising amount that I feel that I did not fully gather until making this video. So with that said, let's get into today's video, which is why is Radovid so crazy, but I'll be talking about more than that. So let's start with when Radovid was a child. When he was a child, he had an incredibly difficult childhood. I know, yeah, he's a prince, all that other stuff, but his dad, King Vizimir II of Redania, was assassinated by a half-elf assassin, which, interestingly, was sent by Philippa Eilhart, or at least it's essentially confirmed that she's the one that killed him, and equally also tried to assassinate Dijkstra. So after his dad was assassinated, there was this incredible sort of political turmoil in Redania, all the noble families trying to take over the kingdom, there was a regency council put in place with Philippa and Dijkstra, and meanwhile Radovid and his mother were just sort of brushed aside and treated not really that important. I mean, Radovid was the heir, but it was just basically Philippa controlling everything. So Philippa decided to raise Radovid as well because she thought that if he could grow into a stronger king, she could sort of control him as well, and then he would take revenge on all these noble families that she wanted to kind of put into his head that they were the reason that all this had happened, and not because she killed his dad, which I believe is something that I'm not entirely sure if Radovid even knows as of The Witcher 3. I think he just hates her because of the way she treated him when he was younger. Because when he was younger, she essentially, I don't know how else to put it, she kind of emasculated him, made him feel weak, made herself seem really strong. She was very strict with him, and he really resented her for that. And also, I just wanted to add this here, there's an interesting fact about Radovid, and it's that he was actually engaged to Ciri at one point, although the two never actually met, and this was when he was about 9 years old, and Ciri was apparently 12, so that makes Ciri older than Radovid, and Vizimir broke off this engagement without any explanation. It's just quite an interesting little fact, I think. And also, you might be wondering, well, Radovid did have siblings, unless you didn't know that, and you might think, what actually happened to his siblings? Well, one actually joined the priesthood, or priestesses, after she failed to marry Foltest because he was too busy, with his sister, and the other entered Aretuza, so, well, he was the heir anyway, but that's how he eventually became king. So, Radovid became king at quite a young age, and he very quickly earned the title of the Stern. He played the political game very well, dismantled all the nobility that disobeyed his orders, and essentially solidified Redania as a very strong kingdom. This brings us into around about where The Witcher 1 is, and he actually was in The Witcher 1 and he was going to work with the Salamandra for this whole thing. He thought he could use them to try and gain more power, but he decided they weren't actually worth it. But he also did talk to Geralt, and what's interesting is if Geralt saves Ada, Foltest's daughter, in The Witcher 1, Radovid marries her. So in The Witcher 3, he is technically married to her, but they never mention this. It's almost like it just never happened. There isn't really much else to say about Radovid in The Witcher 1, but in The Witcher 2, it gets a bit more interesting. So in the events leading up to The Witcher 2, he granted the Order of the Flaming Rose lands in Redania because he thought that they could yet again be something that he could use, and he also managed to identify what he thought the strength of humans was. Because if you look at it, the other races are, you could say, arguably better in the sense that dwarves, they have dexterity, elves, they have their philosophy and they're very intelligent, they have all their magic, but why are humans winning? What is it they've done? And Radovid thought, we have numbers, we have lots and lots of humans, we just overwhelm them and that's how we win. So he used this tactic to essentially create these incredibly large armies with commanders, and then he could just essentially use these armies to stop what happens. I mean, that seems like a very basic thing, but it's this very simple way of just thinking, right, get a lot of soldiers, get a good commander, that's all you need. And it worked. So he managed to stop Nilfgaard's third invasion. He then also had this plan with Henselt in The Witcher 2, which was to annex Temeria because Foltest had been killed by Letho of Gullet, but then at the end of The Witcher 2, he just decides, you know what, I'm going to invade Kedwen. He does that, takes it over, and then that leads into The Witcher 3. So this is where I think it gets particularly interesting, because this is something that, at least for me, I feel is not focused on almost at all in The Witcher 3, and it's such an interesting part of The Witcher, the kind of politics part of it. So if I was to ask a lot of you, why was Radovid doing anything with Whoreson Jr.? Do you have an answer for that? Would you have to look it up, or is it hard to remember? Well, the reason why is both Emir and Radovid realised how important Novigrad was as a city. This is something that is talked about in The Witcher 3, but I feel that just it's not really focused on that much. It's sort of brushed past quite quickly, because, you know, you're doing everything with the big four of Novigrad, and then you just quickly go through it all, you find Ciri, all this other stuff, and it's sort of slightly pushed to the side, I feel. But that's why Radovid was working with Whoreson Jr. He thought that if he could break down the big four from within, he could then take control of Novigrad, and it would essentially lead to him having a much stronger position, and also just control the city in general, and then able to basically stop Emir. And in the same vein, Emir also planned to invade Novigrad, and to a degree, this does actually work. I mean, Radovid realizes Whoreson is not worth his time, so he lets Geralt go and take care of him, and essentially after that point it is very much up to what you decide as the player. So if you don't kill Radovid, he actually defeats the Nilfgaardian invasion, absorbs almost all of the northern kingdoms into his kingdom, or at least he has control of a lot of it. There's talks about him having clashes with Mahakam and Edirn in the future, and even Skellige, and then he of course continued the witch hunts, and apparently seemingly lived a long, I don't want to say happy, but a long life. Or, alternatively, he is killed by Geralt, Dijkstra, Roach, and most importantly, Philippa Eilhart, which is kind of poetic in a way because she sort of raised him, he then took her eyes, and now she's coming back to finish his life, I suppose. It's sort of a sad thing, but it's the way it goes. And I think a really important thing to add about why he hates mages is not just because Philippa killed his dad, which, yet again, unsure whether or not he actually knows this. I'm pretty sure he doesn't, or I feel that he would have done more to her than just gouge out her eyes, but he definitely hated her. But one of the reasons he really does dislike mages, other than just the Philippa thing, is that at the end of The Witcher 2, he realised what the Lodge of Sorceresses plot was. He decided they were not worth trusting, always trying to get power. They threatened his position, so that's why he decided to eradicate them. And he worked with the Church of the Eternal Fire to achieve this. So, why is he so crazy? I guess the main answer would be, who wouldn't be if they were raised by Philippa Eilhart? But also he had a very turbulent childhood. It could also be some nature of genetics within him. I mean, we know a lot about royals, especially if you look at what happened with Foltest. I mean, if you have incest, it can lead to these kind of genetic problems within people, and I'm sure the Redanian royal family has a bit of that somewhere, so who knows, maybe it's linked to that. But I think the main reason is just he had an incredibly difficult childhood, and he had to be strong in order to survive it, and he had to be strong to take over Redania, and he had to be strong to do whatever he decided he needed to, and it's just, you know, I think it's pretty clear why he became the way he did. I mean, he was quite young, to be honest. He's not an old king or anything like that. He's a younger guy. To me, Radovid always seemed a bit like Emperor Nero or something like that. I always felt like that was what they were kind of going for with that character, and I think he's one of the more interesting characters in The Witcher. He's definitely a character that sticks out. He's in every single Witcher game. He's quite important in that way, and yeah, it was kind of interesting to see the end of his story in 3. It really does bring that story together, regardless of what you decide to do. In a way, if you look at it, it's kind of interesting because you have this king who united all of Redania, took over Kedwen, he controls the north, he would then take over Novigrad and invade that if you let him live. He stops Emir, he's this incredibly strong northern king, he becomes known as the protector of the north. It's this quite nice story if you look at it like that, but it's also bad because he's insane and he kills mages and non-humans eventually. So that's not something that you want to encourage. But other than that, it does seem like, oh, that's kind of an interesting story, but it's really not quite that way, is it? It's a bit of an interesting one. That's why I find this, particularly this political part of The Witcher that seems largely ignored in The Witcher 3. It is part of The Witcher 3. Of course, there's the whole thing with Emir wants Ciri because he needs a new person to take over the throne of the Nilfgaardian Empire, but at the same way, there's all this stuff with Radovid and the Northern Kingdoms, and there's everything in Kovir, which isn't talked about a lot, but we know about it because the mages go there, and I feel that this part of The Witcher is something that I would love to see explored in future games, or if they ever did a prequel, explore it a bit more there. Like a prequel very far in the past, you know, something like that. But anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. This has been quite a fun one to make. I hope this has shed some light on some of the things that happen in The Witcher 3 that might be a bit less clear, or just The Witcher in general. If you liked today's video, be sure to like it to let me know you want more. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe, and also please let me know what you'd like to see. I'd love to make some more videos soon, so if you give me some interesting thoughts about it, I'll probably just think, oh yeah, that's good, and I'll have a go at making it. So thank you for watching today's video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Have an awesome rest of the week.